Hello. Hello, folks. Hello, Stanley. Hello, Alec. How you doing? Ah, it is a new year. Tim, you were supposed to bring something to share. Yeah, thanks for joining. I've set aside 2 hours today to do some game dev, but not. We might jump into engine towards the end, but I'm not intending to do much in engine at the moment, and I'll talk about why. But this project has been a little bit off the boil, and that was always the intention, you know. And I think we've kind of stuck to what the initial plan was, which was I knew that in the middle of December I was going to be moving house, and that created a natural point at which it made sense to release the alpha of the game so that people could get their hands on it and get some initial responses to the game. So that's what we did. And then I've had a month of settling into the new house, cleaning the old house, back and forth with all of that. I've had a loss in the family in the last week or two, which has disrupted things a little bit. So there haven't been regular dev streams for this game. I will start doing them again, probably not straight away, but the purpose of this stream is just to kind of review the design, I guess. And I'll talk a little bit about what's been done since the alpha went out, because I've been very lucky to have Gleb, we've even got a link to Gleb on here. So Gleb, I met Gleb through using some of Gleb's tools, predominantly Room Loader to start off with, and now Gleb is sort of doing a lot of the heavy lifting of the engineering for this game now. So there are parts of the game that Gleb is going back and fixing that I initially implemented, and there are new parts of the game that Gleb is dealing with now. And the great thing about, doing things the way that we've done them, which is, doing a very content-rich alpha very early on to get feedback, is that there are elements of the games that we knew the game needed, like a new pause menu and a new, I don't know, I can't think of other things at the moment. And we're able to now make those with the first round of feedback that we received. So I'll give you some examples of that in a minute. But, if we go all the way down here, there's quite a few people that just couldn't play the alpha because it ran too slowly for them. And, that sucks, but ultimately we're not going to spend loads of time optimizing a game at that stage of development when we don't know whether it's like worth developing yet. Because for me, alpha is still kind of that stage. Alpha is still maybe this project might get killed kind of stage. We need to prove whether people actually enjoy doing this core activity that this game is asking them to do. So there were a few people that just flat out couldn't play it. We did do some optimization before that, which is why some people can play it. But before that, it was like, on my machine, you would play for about 20 minutes. And if you survived that long, the game would start slowing down. We had all sorts of weird graphical issues that I went through in the last stream, so I'm not going to go through them again now. But a lot of it is kind of this will get naturally fixed later type problem for various reasons. One of them is that we're going to completely redo the lighting at some point in the next couple of weeks, next couple of months. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff there that it's unfortunate that not everyone could play the game who wanted to, but at the same time, the alpha testing is not there as QA. It's not there to test if the game is optimized. It's there to test if people who can run the game enjoy it and what they enjoy about it and what they don't enjoy about it. So, yeah, one person left a comment that basically said, this alpha is more complete than some early access games. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with this game is me trying to practice what I preach on this channel, which is, look, I can see the rationale behind, release everything you make, finish games, practice finishing games. But personally, I think a game only really becomes a game when it's something people enjoy doing and something that people want to do, right? There's the two kind of pillars of making a good game. Engagement, like what do people enjoy doing once they play the game? And appeal, which is what about the way your game looks or the concept behind your game or the story of your game? what about those things pulls people into the game? And I don't think it's worth finishing a game that doesn't have those two things lined up. Now, there might be some learning reason for finishing the game, and there's a really good article you can read about that by Derek Yu on like how and why to finish games. And I think it's an important skill to learn. You know, I often get like snarky little comments in my YouTube videos that say, you've never made a game. And it's like, well, I've made loads of games as part of a commercial team, and I have made loads of solo projects. It's just that my personal standards are at a level where the things that I've made that I could have released as commercial games, I just didn't, because I saw them as hobby projects. And so what I'm saying here is like, it's not necessarily advice, it's just my personal ethics on that thing, is that, you know, a game is something that people play and people enjoy playing. So if you've got something and you've been like throwing it out there trying to get playtesters and no one's interested, and or the people play it and they're just like, then you haven't really made a game. You've made a piece of software and you've convinced yourself it's a game because you made it in a game engine, you know? And that's what this early stage of validation is like, is there something here? So, and I feel like we're at a stage now where there is something there, and we were getting like feedback, people playing it for a very long time. It's not everyone's cup of tea, and that's fine. But at the same time, nothing is. So I think we'll go through this comment in a minute. This is particularly good. But the last wave of stuff that we've actually put into the game, I can run and we can look at it now. But we basically just, Gleb has been replacing all of the menus in the game. The earlier version of the game just had a single screen settings menu, and it had a map behind it, and you could sort of see the map of what you built, because this is like effectively a Metroidvania that you build as you play. So you need the map. But the way that it was set up was just, we kept adding stuff to the menu until the map was completely unusable. So we've got the workings of the new menu in. It doesn't have all of the content in yet. Yeah, thanks for the condolences first. Yeah, complicated stuff. Family members and so yeah, we've got some. It's kind of zoomed out too far to read the text now, but we'll fix that later on. So if anyone who's just joined this and isn't familiar with the game, we've got a kind of Spelunky type roguelike platformer, but rather than the game procedurally generating a world, you kind of build it as you go. And that means that as the game goes on, you'll learn more and more about what the different rooms do or what they have in them. There's certain bits in the rooms that is randomized. Someone sent me a really funny question on one of these videos the other day, actually. It was like, you know, how do you test everything when it's randomized? I'm like, and it, you know, how do you make sure that everything is tested thoroughly? It's like, well, I don't know. Like, there's enough games that use very heavy use of randomness, and I think the answer is you make a game that you want to play a lot. And oh, that's the invisible block problem that we had before. You know, that's one of the reasons why people make roguelikes. The reason why there are so many roguelikes isn't just that people think, oh, those are popular, so I'll make one of those. It's because they're enjoyable to make, because your game can keep surprising you, because it's a kind of situation generator. And I think people that are like basing their decisions on what to make on the idea of like market-driven game development don't understand that there's like an inherent pleasure in making a machine that can surprise you. And yeah, so that was a weird question to me, because it's like, well, I'll just play it loads. And if you read the Spelunky book, like Derek Yu says exactly the same thing. There are code snippets in the Spelunky book where he shows you, you know, how the game determines what thing spawns in a particular place on the map. And he's just like, well, it was just trial and error, you know. I do a thing, and if the numbers for the randomness feel right, then they feel right. And I think it's one of the reasons why it's really helpful to do some game design outside of the context of video games, because stuff like the difference between actual randomness and perceived randomness is like just not something you get from just looking at the numbers, because how people perceive randomness happening to them is very different from like the reality of what's on what's on the what's in the engine, and that's why, you know, people have these kind of problems with systems like in XCOM, where the thing says you have a 95% chance to hit, and then you miss loads of times, and it feels like you're missing loads. You're missing a kind of statistically accurate amount of times, but because of kind of human psychology, it feels like more. And that's one of the reasons why you do have to play these things and not just... Yeah, it's strange. So I have to kind of interface with so many people that have such a different ethos about what they're doing to what I do. And I think that kind of question all comes down to, like, well, do you enjoy your game enough to want to playtest it a load? And if you don't, then why are you making it? And if you don't enjoy playing games, why are you making games? You know, that's a... Yeah, the Spotify example is a really good one, actually. The kind of... where Spotify had to, like, make their random seem more random because random didn't seem random enough for people. So yeah, we've got a few bugs in the build at the moment, which we'll deal with later on, but here we've got like a whole type of block that just doesn't appear, and this is stuff that is... I wrote like a very shoddy custom lighting thing that is turned off here, and if I go through... We don't have settings for that, but this is the new menu that Gleb's been implementing. That's a nice little border on there. This is kind of... I drew this on Procreate, which is an iPad app. So Procreate is great in the sense that you buy it and you've got it for like $12 forever, but you do need an Apple Pencil, which is like the most obscene kind of cost to tech ratio ever, because it is literally just a white pencil that costs 100 quid. But Procreate is great. I use it for sketching game ideas out quite a lot, and that's where we've got this menu. I haven't quite got the colors locked in to look like the main game yet, but it will have to go through a few different iterations to get there. But those of you who have played the game, you will recognize this menu. This is like the list of relics you can collect during a run. So we've got a couple of different pieces of design language here. The orange ones are the ones that I've actually collected, so you can see what effects I've got on my character. The purple ones are the ones that we have collected before but haven't collected this run. And then there'll be another style for stuff that you just haven't unlocked yet. The map will go here. The cookbook will go here, which is a new feature. The cookbook and the rooms tab, these are both new features. So this is based a little bit on feedback from players and a little bit on kind of just what we knew the game needed eventually. So there's going to be a menu here that tells you stuff you can cook. And that was an interesting feature because some players seemed to get really into it and like working out what the recipes were and stuff, and others didn't engage with it at all. So I think there'll be some ways to encourage that a little bit more. Just checking in the chat what people are saying. The happy everything guy, is this your... Yeah, this is my game. And one of the things I'm doing, you'll see up here, there's this little Krankenhaus logo in the top right corner. A lot of the DirtWorld stuff on this game is going to start being offloaded onto its own channel over there. So when I do like a trailer for the game, I'll do it on a different channel, because the way that YouTube algorithms work is that they have like different audiences they serve your content to. And if your channel is too broad in terms of what it does, then it won't get to the right audience. So I've started offloading the stuff I do about this game to a secondary channel that is just for my game dev. The reason I'm still doing streams about this game on the Indie Game Clinic channel is that streaming software makes it very, very difficult to switch which channel you're streaming on. So I'm going to be continuing to stream my dev on here. And we might get back into a cadence of once a week once we're running up again and everything. But yeah, I'm just checking for other questions. How do you go about the content problem? Huge content requirement that all randomness-based games require. Right, I'm going to talk. I am going to dive into that in a minute because it's kind of the thing that I want to work through on a whiteboard today. So because you have a content problem with pretty much every game that you make, right? Of like, how do we make enough stuff for this game? Um, the difference in this kind of game is like the procedurality means it can fall together in ways that you don't expect. Yeah. It is still related to the channel if I'm streaming dev, yeah, but also a game dev audience and a games audience is not the same thing. And I want the stuff that's like, hey, play this game to be served to a games audience. Because, I mean, we've already seen this a little bit with the alpha test, but, you know, there were people who I'm obviously grateful for everyone who joined and playtested the game, but there will have been a decent chunk of those people who joined because they like Indie Game Clinic and they like what I do and they want to support what I do, rather than because they were specifically interested in a weird procedural platformer with like 80s claymation vibes, right? So it's like if you're trying to like funnel an audience from one thing into another thing, you might end up with bad data, especially when you're doing a process like playtesting, because you're getting people who are there for a different reason than just like, oh, this game looks interesting to me. And, you know, out of everyone who playtested the game so far, there are a few people who I know played for ages and ages and ages and got really high scores and collected loads of loot and stuff. And that means that those people will be the ones whose feedback sort of filters to the top for me, because they're the people that genuinely enjoy the thing and like the vibe of the thing. So that's why I think like the other thing is that this channel is not a channel that is about my game development generally. Like that is what Bite Me is about. That is what like Aramus's channel is about. It's like them going, here's me trying to build up a game studio and here's my thing. And then some of the other stuff comes out of that where it's like, here is my advice based on my experience. The point of this channel, generally speaking, is it is a almost like a traditional games criticism channel where we're looking at games and talking about them, but we're trying to do it from the perspective of learning game design rather than just like endless videos analyzing Zelda, using smaller games that people are working on, which is like the format you would use in a university class as well. If you're in like the last year, everyone's working on their final major projects, you probably have a thing where you get together, play test each other's games every week and talk about how they could be improved and stuff like that. I'm trying to do that format really. And that's why it can feel a bit like off-brand when we do stuff like this, because I mean, it's important. It's one of the reasons why Mark Brown on Game Maker's Toolkit started making his own games, because you get a lot of people that just think that your ability to use a game engine is the thing that qualifies you to talk about game design, which is incorrect. But there's obviously been a value to him doing that as well. So there's a value to keeping it mixed as well. I totally get that. But I don't think, in terms of like the commercial prospect of the game, I don't think it's the best way of doing things. I think it's better to aim for an audience that isn't game developers, because game developers are often too engaged in making their games to play games or to so because you know that's I like a very cynical way of looking at why we play video games, right? And this is quite reductive, but one of the reasons why we play games is to feel like a fake sense of achievement about having done something. And if you're actually doing something like making art, making music, making games, that kind of takes the place of video games in your life. And of all the kind of adults that I know that are aged between like 30 and 50 who don't play video games, it's because they get a big sense of achievement out of something else in their life. And that is one of the reasons why I think if you're making games and you're trying to market them, then pointing too much of what you're doing towards other game developers is a bad idea, because those people don't play as many games as other groups of people, and they perhaps should. And I do think, you know, one of the things about getting better at game design is often just playing more of the type of game that you're making so that you can see how different games handle the same problem and stuff like that. But often we don't have the drive to play games because, you know, making stuff is like a game to us. It fulfills the same role in our life. So yeah. But yeah, I can't stream on the separate channel because it's just a pain in the ass, basically, logistically. I haven't been into this mural board for ages, so I've got a couple of different documents we work in, which is a bit hellish. We've got an actual GDD in Notion, which is, just check it's not on my diary about my feelings or something. No, it's on the GDD. So we've got a GDD in Notion that lays out how certain things work. I didn't really start fleshing this out until Gleb started working on the project because, to be honest, a lot of this game is just in my head. And when a game is small enough, there are different purposes you might have for making a document, right? One is to actually communicate with other people about the idea. One is to record your own idea. I generally don't feel the need to record my own ideas for myself. I find writing them down can be helpful in order to think through the problem in the first place, which is why I think ChatGPT is such a bane to existence. And I'm so glad that I got out of working in universities when I did, because I would just be losing my shit at students all the time for using it. And it's like, it's not, oh, you cheated on the essay. It's that the writing is the thinking, you know, and that's there's always a benefit for writing your ideas down because it helps you to kind of think them through better. That's writing is a sort of an add-on to thinking. It's a strengthener of thinking. It's not just a thing you do to produce a document. So I'm very against like producing documents because you think you should produce a document. It should be sort of for thinking things through. But documentation's a bit scattered. There's stuff over here on Notion. I've got these old mural boards, and I'm gonna go on to mural again today because I've got a few things that I want to work through. That it's just best to do it on mural. I've also got this Canva file set up that has a bunch of graphic design stuff in. So I've been using Canva for the wireframes for the menus, and part of the reason for that is it's very easy to just pull in loads of different like clip art and stuff. So the menu that you saw in the game that looks like this started life as this kind of clip art assortment of pillars and stuff like that. So I've actually got a time lapse from Procreate here where you can see that is how it started. And again, you know, Canva just allowed me to set the thing to the right resolution for the game, dump all of this collage into it, and then export that so I could draw over it, and then drew over it in Procreate. Procreate, another really nice thing about it, it produces these time lapses where you can just like view back how that thing was made or drawn. So yeah, I'm jumping around between programs quite a bit, and that's messy, but you know, you use the tool you need for the job. And whenever I do one of these streams or I do a video about something, people are always like, what's that program? And it's like, well, Mural is pretty much the same as Figma. It's pretty much the same as Miro. But the reason I want to use it today is I want to, well, what I want to do first is just map out a few big areas of design that the game needs dealing with before I dive too much into implementing new content. And this is kind of the content problem someone was talking about earlier. Because the core systems of the game are almost there, really. And let's frame it as problems, because if it's not a problem, we don't need to worry about it. So the content problems we have in this game, remember when we talk about problems in design, a problem doesn't actually have to be like an urgent thing. It's just, what are you trying to solve in the thing you're making? So deck composition is one, and that's something we'll talk about today. And then we've got a bunch of like mid-range progression in the game that works. So I'm gonna just make we're gonna make like almost like a just concept diagram thingy here. So we need to talk about deck composition. And you might, it's not obvious from just seeing someone play the game once, but there's like a deck of rooms that you can manipulate as you play through the game, so you can kind of get different combinations of things to build. Now, in terms of the progression, we've got some mid-range progression stuff, which is like player can permanently increase their health and keys are the resource you use to unlock rooms. So that's like a lot of games that are sort of survival crafting games have some sort of resource that you can upgrade that kind of changes your range as a player of like how far you can go each time. It might be how your pressure or air in something like Subnautica, but it's like a kind of a sort of a thing that you upgrade that is, it just sort of changes how long your runs are, I guess. And we've got that. We've got, you can upgrade your keys, you can upgrade the amount of heart containers you've got. And we've also got a way to kind of upgrade the deck of rooms that you pick from as you build the level, but it's currently gated behind something very strange that I don't think any of the playtesters actually got to. I need to check that, but it was... But basically, we've got some very weird secrets, and we need to maybe make some slightly less weird secrets to onboard the player into learning about those. So what we don't have is an end, like a win state for the game, like a total you've actually completed what the game wants you to do. And one of the things you'll notice with these run-based games is they tend to have multiple of these. So, Slay the Spire has Ascensions, Blueprints has, you have like the basic thing you can do to find the final room, and then that's enough for some players and they feel like they've done the game, but they've only done like 10% of the game. So we need a win state, and it probably needs staggered or degrees of success. But I would say there is a little bit more of a story here than there appears to be. You're kind of working for an evil boss, and I want the kind of win state of the game to be defeating them in some way, and I haven't really worked out what that is. So this is the sort of thing. I have a few ideas around it, but they're very loose. Where's the deck? Yeah, the deck is the set of rooms you can draw from, right? And one of the things that we need to do in the game is introduce some iconography that helps people to understand that aspect of the game. But I will there is a little hint to it in the interface here that I will show you in the game. Yeah, I mean I don't really see using multiple programs and stuff as an issue, because every time I try and use something that does everything, it ends up doing some of the things wrong. I used to work in a studio that used Notion for everything. Trying to make a Gantt chart in Notion that allowed you to put things next to each other just was terrible. Okay, so the only thing, someone asked about the deck, the only thing on the screen at the moment, and this is not as small as this would have been before, but this down here is telling you about the kind of quote unquote deck. So it's a deck conceptually, but in terms of the player model of what the player understands is going on in the game, it's not very clear. So at the moment, this is telling you you have 25 rooms left that you can build, and you've built one grey room and one green room, and that's what that little piece of interface means. And what I would want to do here eventually, and I think I've got this in Canva, So if we go up here, I don't have it anymore. Basically, we want a icon for the idea of a room deck. You know, like a little stack of cards that maybe has this door drawn on top of it. I'm going to come back to that later, but yeah, basically, it's a known problem that players don't understand that there is a deck. They do after they've played it a little bit, but it's not immediately obvious. But the thing that I want to try and lock in, one of the things I want to lock in is just how many, what the deck actually contains. Because at the moment, the rooms that you get in the deck are the experiments that we've just sort of started out with. And we've got the grey rooms that are, it's got over here. The ruins are the grey rooms. That should say multiple exits. These are the things that define them, right? This is trying to do some orthogonal design so that these things feel different from each other. So the ruins have the danger of traps. They have currency keys and relics. This green diamond is a good thing, right? So this is like the bright green is the positive reason you would build this type of room. The light green is a slightly less powerful sort of secondary reason you might build the room. The red is a reason why the room presents some sort of challenge. And yeah, so the ruins are all designed so that you come in at the bottom and you go out at the top, or vice versa, or mostly designed that way. So they have multiple exits, but that also forces the character to have to move up and down, which kind of creates this very higgledy-piggledy level layout, which is part of the point. There is a danger of traps in them. There are no monsters in them per se. There are some monsters that spawn out of jars and stuff like that, but you wouldn't build a grey room and then there's a monster in there. It's like, you know, a desolate ruin of a building. But you're building these to kind of obtain the main base currencies that you use during a run, which is like keys and coins and stuff. We've got the green wilderness rooms, which don't have any danger in them. They have a higher level of internal randomness because the rooms have like a set layout, and then there are certain things that can randomize, like tree locations and jar locations and stuff like that. They tend to be awkward and irregular shapes. And the thing about the wilderness rooms is they, like the first couple you build, don't really do much on their own, but the more that you build, the kind of more benefit you'll get from them. So, for example, they spawn these merchants that you can sell things from. And this is out of date now, so they actually spawn a merchant on every odd number room. So every odd number green room you build, number 2, number 4, number 6, will have a merchant in that you can either buy stuff from, you can buy relics from, or you can like throw items at them and earn coins. These are out of date. And there's also a bunch of different things in the wilderness rooms that depend on how late you build the room. So, for example, there's a room called the sapling, which is a little tree, and when you build that, it counts how many green rooms you've already built. And if you've built loads of green rooms, it makes that tree really big. Likewise, the mine does the same thing, where it's like it has a higher chance to spawn gold ore that you can blow up and collect than any other room. But the later you build it, the more ore it will have. So I want to like use that design rule for all of the green rooms. So green rooms are like good to stack. If you do a green run, you want to build all of the green rooms, but the order you build them in will change how good each room is, right? So there might be a particular green room that is like amazing if you built it like as the 8th green room out of 8. But doing that requires you to survive quite a long run, right? And then the red rooms are the dangerous rooms that spawn monsters, and they block your return. This is a bit contentious at the moment. One of the playtesters said they'd like to be able to always punch through the fungus blocks, because there's currently a relic that allows you to do that. But because the fungus blocks, which you didn't see previously because there's like a visual bug on them. But if I just load up the trailer, you'll see them. The fungus blocks are like, they're living blocks, right? I don't know if you've seen the anime Scavenger's Reign, but it's very much drawing on that kind of scary body horror fungus stuff. These grow. It's part of the reason why the game is is so slow on some machines because of what we're doing with the blocks. These grow, and I think we maybe will go down the route of like you can punch them and destroy them, but there will be a trade-off. So they will kind of puff out into poison gas and they will shoot off spores that infect other areas. So you can just kind of go through a red room and punch your way through, but it becomes more and more hazardous. That still keeps their kind of feeling of the red rooms are dangerous, which is what we want. So the red rooms are dangerous because they have monsters in, but they're also dangerous because they block your return. So if you build a red room, go through it, build loads of the rest of the level, and then because it's got like an extraction mechanic where you need to get back to the portal to exit the level and go back to the, to bank what you collected. If you've built lots of red rooms on the route, there's a chance they'll have kind of filled out and blocked you by the time you come back. What I want to do really before we start locking in the rest of the rooms is to decide on the total deck composition. And I think the way that it will work is we're going to have... This will be the starting deck for like every run, right? You always have this set of things, which will be 8 grey rooms, 8 green rooms, and 8 red rooms. And I think what I like about that is it gives the player, like players who are kind of knowledgeable and understand the game, it gives them a very clear sort of mental model of the chances of anything. Yeah, the reason why this stuff is so small at the moment is because we've just changed the GUI to be in HD, whereas before the GUI was like a decent size. We've just scaled it. Yeah, this is what it looked like before Gleb started doing the last round of work to implement the new menus and stuff. So you can see here, if I play it, you can see down there. The text size of these things was much better, but if I run it in the current build, everything is shrunk down. But we'll address that later. So the starting deck composition will always be, when you start the game, you've got a 1 in 3 chance of any room being one of these things, and sometimes you might draw all 3 red rooms and have to pick a red room, but most of the time you can have a 1 in 3 chance. But what this means is, if you start trying to do a green run, every time you pick a green room, it's coming out of the deck. So your chance of being forced to build a red or a grey room increases because it's always picking from 1 of 3 when you open a new door. The issue, and it's not really an issue, it's just something to be aware of, is that anything we add on top of this is going to change that balance quite a bit. And this was one of the problems that people found with blueprints quite a lot, was as you start to add stuff to the deck, the chance of pulling the thing that you want gets really, really low. Now, one of the things that we've got in DirtWorld is we've got this set of blue rooms, and there's not 8 of them, but I think we'll aim for 8 eventually. We've got a set of blue rooms, and once you've unlocked them, you can add them to the deck, but you don't get them every run. Instead, you get those crystals that are like the progression currency, and then at the start of a run, you can say, oh, I want that blue room, and I want that blue room, and I want that blue room. And then you can attempt to run with this deck composition. Or you can, you could effectively have all of the blue rooms. And there might even be something that I was thinking there might be something you could do or collect during a run that would just suddenly add these 8 blue rooms into the deck, right? But I think by keeping it as 8, 8, 8, 8, that's quite neat, because it means if we've got the starting deck, you've got a 1 in 3 chance of it being any color. But then if we add in the blue deck, which is kind of like the futuristic techie rooms that you unlock in the mid game, we've only changed it from a third to we've changed it from a 33% chance to get the color you want or the color you don't want to a 25% chance, which isn't a massive difference. It's enough It's enough for it to feel different in terms of how you play the game, but it's not big enough to break anything. And I quite like that. So I think if we go with 8 of these, it then means if you have a run where you add all 8 blue rooms to your deck, which are like the techie futuristic ones, it's like you've reduced the chance of getting a red dangerous room, but you've also reduced the chance of getting a green room, which are like the main rooms you'd use for like building your economy during a run. So I quite like that. I think we'll either go for 8 blue rooms or 4, depending, you know, I think I've got more than 4 currently, but I could condense them down so that they're a bit more multi-purpose, if that makes sense. And then the other thing we've got that you can get during a run is gold rooms. I currently only have 3 of these, but I imagine doing 4 because then that kind of keeps the math simple. Now, the way that the gold rooms work is that you collect them during a run. So they're sort of one of the chains of... It's not a puzzle per se. It's more like you just collect a map and then it's like, oh, you've got this room in your deck. What we don't have currently is... We'll just get the engine open now and go to the game project I haven't used for a month. I don't know where anything is. Right, so room templates. These are all the rooms. And I usually color code these, but it doesn't save the color coding sometimes. But so we've got castle rooms. I'm just going to go through them and color code them now to make life easier just for the sake of this stream. So the Arboretum, no, the Carnival, and is the Burrows currently in the game? I can't remember. The Burrows is a red room. So these are rooms in, you can see this is what my kind of level design looks like. So this is a room in the game. These pink things are markers where an enemy can spawn. These jars are places that would spawn a jar, and then it's culled randomly. And then these mouths are like enemies that can spawn or be culled. The Carnival is a green room. That's where you get these presents that have random stuff in that's sometimes bad. The castle will stay as grey. I'll make it purple just so we can see it's been deliberately chosen. The cavern is a green room. The chasm is a green room. The crossing is a grey room. We've got 3 dungeon variants. The fort, I think, is listed as a grey room. The gauntlet and the hatchery are red rooms. The henge is a green room. That's a blue room. So there are rooms like this, like the kitchen, that I think are a little bit underwhelming when you first build them. So what I might do, if we go to this 888 kind of layout, is merge some of these things together. So that instead of having little rooms that don't feel very exciting or interesting or only do one thing, we can kind of reduce it a little bit. That's a gold room. The refectory and the reliquary are gold rooms. The sapling is a green room. Security, again, that's not very exciting. Study. The veil. The vault, that's a gold room. Warehouse. And I don't think wine cellar is currently used. So these ones that I haven't coloured in are ones that aren't in use in the game. The auto market is a blue room. The arboretum is a blue room. So if I were to go back to this and make it reflect what we have in the game, I can just change the outlines of some of these. So we do actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 green, 7, 8. We have 8 green rooms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So if I just kind of go through this is the kind of trying to solve the content design for this aspect of the game. And what we want really, this is kind of a thinking tool. What I'll do is I'll kind of think out loud on the stream, and then later on I'll probably go through and add this to a game design document once I know what we've actually decided. Because at the moment it's just writing is for like very linear stuff, but sometimes you need to diagram things while you're working them out. So there is like a rubric we can use to work out which of these are good rooms, based on what we've already done. And what I mean by that is we go over here, and when I was talking over here a minute ago, we've got some kind of design guidelines for what a wilderness room should do, right? So I can now put those up here, and I can say, I can say like, does it improve the later you build it? We don't know if this really needs to apply to every single green room, but I do think it has been a good designing principle so far for a lot of this. Now, the carnival, not sure. Is there a way to build a table here? Just build a table instead. There we go. There we go. So I'm doing things in a very weird way, but I'm also very out of the loop on both using this software and thinking about this project. So and doing anything while thinking out loud. But we can basically come up with a little rubric for whether something is doing what we want it to do in the game. So these are our green rooms. How does it contribute to the player economy? How does it fit the theme of growth? I think that's probably a better way of framing this. So the mine, like I said, that gets a tick because it spawns more ore the later you build it, the later you draft it. I'm going to start trying to talk about drafting rather than building because you're not building really. The sapling has a similar rule. It grows taller and spawns more fruit the later that you draft it. Which is fun because it kind of creates a mini platformer puzzle of like, oh, I can see like a fruit I've never seen up there, like a rare fruit, but I have to jump all the way up and then not fall down and die. The landfill spawns more trash the later you draft it, which has a secret function that I'm not going to tell you. And then these other ones, they don't The other ones don't have this kind of mechanical link to, the idea that the more green rooms you build, the better the green rooms will be. They don't have a link to that yet. So that's the thing I would want to resolve. And I don't know how to do that right now. Then we can look at the other one and say which ones fulfill this. How do they... Basically, if you've played the game for a little while and you know what's in the rooms, why would you build the rooms? Like, what do they actually provide? And some of this is already in the game and it's in the description of the room, but if we're going to go down this route of the deck composition being 8 of this, like, how does a room justify its existence in the content of the game? Because some of these won't make it to the final cut. Some of these will be taken out. I might even go, oh, we're going to have 6 of each color. And actually, looking at it this way, framing the problem this way of like, they're not just a place where it's like, oh, it's a valley, it's shaped like a little valley, it needs to perform a particular function, so when the player is playing the game, they can look at it and go, why would I want to build that right now? Rather than just looking pretty. Going down this route might actually mean that we end up doing 6 instead of 8. It's hard to say. So the carnival gives you a random assortment of prize boxes to purchase. The chasm doesn't have anything in it currently. They all can spawn a merchant on the 2nd, 4th, 6th, but that's still not enough to make the rooms feel like super unique. The henge has a larger amount of fairy altars than other rooms. The spawns more ore than any other room. The sapling spawns more fruit than any other room. The veil always contains 2 goats which can make milk. Yeah, the carnivals are evil. Oh, I forgot about that as well. Yeah. The balloons in the carnival, you pick them up and then you can jump and you can float up. I put them in as like to experiment with a mechanic that would let the player sort of, it's like a soft teleport, right? It's like, oh, I've balked the level and I need to get back over there. Oh, I'll fly over using a balloon. Yeah. So the chasm, the landfill, how does it contribute to the player economy? Well, the landfill trash bags have special secret uses. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, but having a place that spawns trash bags. There's also a bit of narrative going on here where it's like there's the green rooms are like a sort of Grimm's fairy tales, ancient there's gnomes and stuff in them and it's all nice. And you can do a run where it's very cozy and you just build green rooms if you draw the right rooms, or you just don't go in that direction when you build a red or a grey room. You can kind of build quite a cozy green world. But the idea of there being one that is full of trash, I quite like, because it opens up the idea that this has been spoiled by folks that have come later on or something in the world. And then there's these ones that are just like they don't have a strong rationale yet. Like the chasm. The chasm is kind of a fun thing to build because it gives you a mini platforming puzzle. So it's kind of fun that it's there, but maybe it needs to do more than just be a chasm. Not sure. Because creating a big hole you can fall down isn't really in line with what we want the green rooms to generally do. So we can do the same thing with... Maybe this matters more with the green rooms because they're like the economy rooms you're trying to build. And then the red rooms are just sort of... A lot of them are repetitions of the same thing. This was one of the problems that I was coming across. Really, was just like, oh, I need a variation on that room that kills you. So, for example, there's these two rooms that are both called Gauntlet that are like an old castle that has been overgrown with fungus. And you come in on one side, you do some jumps across, and you either get up there or you fall down and go down there. But they are both just variations on the same thing with a slightly different layout. And I need to work out whether that's okay or not. And I think maybe in the red rooms it could be, but it's not as interesting for world building to have like two rooms that have the same name and are just variations on the same thing, you know? So maybe one of the problems that I'm really pushing up against here is that I'm aiming too high with how many there are in a category. And if we did go down to 6, then it could be that the chasm is a red room now. And, you know, so it's just, it's all interlocked. It's kind of why it's helpful to lay things out this way and think about them this way, because everything is so interrelated to each other. But I do think some of the problems I'm already having over here are just to do with being too ambitious with how much stuff there is. Okay, so in terms of red rooms, I'll just clear this out. And maybe they don't need as much of a rationale because ultimately it's more... I will be the first to admit this game is very much like... This is like a mad scientist game. This is not a... This is not a, like, let's make this game because we think this is a sort of easy idea that will be easy to pull off. This was very much just started as an experiment and then got out of hand. I have a few ideas for games I'd like to start in the next year that are much more... It's not necessarily about scope. It's not... Scope isn't the issue, but it's to do with how many unanswered design questions does the project have in it innately, you know? And this project has so many. And they're kind of fun to chew through. But, so Gauntlet, what does it do? And I think here, we change what they say up here. So, what is the challenge in this room? Well, let's say what's the risk and what's the reward? Because that's what the red room should be about, right? Because there is a possible sort of style of playing this game where you collect specific relics that reward you for building more red rooms, and you deliberately go into more red rooms and fight more monsters and stuff. That is a thing that the game already has in it. So we really want the red rooms to have this concept of risk and reward baked into them. So we've got Gauntlet, and I'll put that down twice because that's what we've currently got in the deck. And we've got the hatchery. And to give it like a, you know, just thinking about the hatchery as an example, because I'm letting my brain go where it needs to go right now. Monsters, I'll call the mechanic overgrowth, but when I talk about overgrowth, I'm talking about the, call it blocking, when the blocks grow out and stop you getting back to the start. So someone earlier said, how do you handle the fact that a game like this is very content hungry? And I would say that part of the design ethos with this game is to make sure that nothing only has one use. And so it's less about how much content you can make, and it's more about creating a really rich network of interactions between the things, right? So I've followed this when I make enemies, and I would like to follow it a bit more. So for example, this guy, the Myconid, the little mushroom guy, when you punch or go near it, it goes into like a little alert mode, it shakes and then it explodes. But you have a window of time where you can pick them up and throw them. and you can use them to mine. You can use them to blow open a barrier. You can use them to blow open some soil and get some oil, like get some gold out of the soil. So they are a risk in their own right, as an enemy character mob in a game would normally be. But they also have a secondary function of like you can deliberately take extra risk by running up to them when they're going to explode, picking them up and throwing them, right? And that's kind of the design ethos of the whole game. So one of the things I'll be doing as we get back into working on content, because I haven't really been doing that for a little while, and that part of the reason is I need to solve these more top level questions. But as we work on more content, like more enemies, types of blocks, items in the world, they will kind of follow that logic. So it's less about adding loads of things, and it's more about making sure that the things you do add aren't superfluous. And you can even see that in the way that they develop new features in Minecraft. When they add stuff to Minecraft, there is a reason why Minecraft does not have loads and loads of different animals, because they make sure that every mob has a different behavior, a different like resource associated with it, a different thing that it eats, a different, appearance rules, all of that kind of stuff. Because Minecraft is a knowledge game, it's like a wiki game, and that's kind of what I'm trying to build here, is like a game that is about how well do you understand these systems. It's really important for a world object to not just be a superfluous different version of something else, right? So the content problem is less about how do you make loads of stuff, and more like how do you make sure that all of the stuff has multiple uses, because that's what will make the game feel really rich, and that's what will really give people like the replay value of it. And by limiting the amount of things you make, rather than like trying to make loads and loads of meaningless variety, you probably are much more likely to end up with a deeper game that has lots and lots of replay value. This is why you don't get like, in deck builders, you don't get like 5 different strike cards that do different amounts of damage, because that doesn't really add value for a player. And it's like suddenly you've got a new card that you need to make new art for, but it doesn't add value to the player in terms of things for them to think about or things for them to mentally process. Whereas objects that actually have different relationships to each other do. So that's a thing. That's like a whole. It's not a universal game design thing. It's just, I think this type of game, like a game that has some element of engine building or crafting, like a Minecraft or a Don't Starve or a Terraria. It's more, it's almost like the relationships between the objects in the game world are where the game lives, and that's kind of the thing to think about. So, yeah, back to trying to complete this table. Game. Where's my room templates? Right, we've got burrows. So a lot of these rooms, the red rooms, are much more like, the difference in rooms is just a different shape. Rather than it necessarily having very different stuff in. So the pit is already like the chasm. So risk, falling. The nest. What's the risk in the nest? So they all have monsters and blocking as a risk. Now what I could do is this is a point where I could say, well, maybe we pick some to have like a unique monster, and that's then what differentiates them. The gauntlets both have monsters blocking and spikes as a risk. And the gauntlets both have that little pink symbol up there as a relic. So they both have a relic as a reward. So you've got like an incentive to build these. The challenge with doing this kind of exercise is It's like you're trying to identify the problems and then you automatically go into trying to fix the problems, and it's like, well, it's not really not what we need to do here yet. We just need to get a clearer picture of the problems. So the problem I have over here is that not all of the rooms contribute to the theme of the green deck. The problem we have over here is that there is not really any differentiation between the rooms apart from the layout of them. And then we need to find out if that is work out if that really is a problem. And there might be some meta level solutions for these, like I say, just reducing it to 6 of each color. Or changing the criteria of like what these rooms are supposed to do. But what I don't want is to completely remove the sort of strategic card game element by just having some rooms that are just a pretty layout. You know, there should be a thing where it's like all of these rooms, these ones here, they have a very clear kind of strategic use of what they're good for, you know, and the same with these. These have a very clear risk reward kind of offer of what they're doing. And maybe I'm just being too strict on myself because I'm sure there were plenty of rooms in blueprints that didn't fit into some sort of schema in this clear way, but it's still a kind of process you need to go through for whatever the content variations are in your game. Right, we'll do the same with grey rooms. I think we can be more lenient with grey rooms though, because it's just sort of like the generic dungeons, and I think people will just naturally accept that that's grey. That's like the neutral thing. Right, so we've got the armory, where you risk. The reward is bombs. Bombs are very useful because they help you to mine. They're one of the only ways you can mine. You don't have like the ability to directly attack blocks. You need to blow them up with stuff. And we don't have an inventory of bombs like in Spelunky. We have to like physically pick the bombs up, light them, and throw them around. And that means that this is a very helpful room. But you can also blow yourself up. You have everything you need in that room right there because there's a torch up there. So you can run in the room, pick a bomb up, and then if you jump and press up and throw, if you get it just right, you can throw the bomb up, light it on that torch, and then it will fall back down and light all of the other bombs, and then you're dead, which is funny. I like that. The castles. I think maybe it is okay to have duplicates in here because so that's what they look like. They are all just called castle when you draft them, and they all kind of take you from here. You come in at the bottom left or the bottom right if it's flipped, and you have to work your way up past the traps and go through one of the other doors. And they all kind of follow that format, right? So although they're different internally, they're still sort of the same logic. It's a random selection of traps and treasures, and you're going from the bottom to the top, and that's what differentiates a castle from a dungeon, because a dungeon you go from the top to the bottom. So castles, the risks are spikes, arrows, and the minor one is that these jars can have wraiths in, but that can happen anywhere in the game, so I'm not going to put that as a unique thing of these rooms. The rewards you can get here are crates, which have utility items in, like bombs, torches, and keys. We could say that moving upward is a utility of these rooms as well. Bulldogger, I like the Vale goats idea. I mean, actually, one of things I can put here is like, so if we change this criteria, if we loosen this criteria on the green rooms to say, why does build order matter? So why might the player care about which of these they put in which order? We can actually kind of make it so that the Vale is better to have earlier because you want the goats earlier because they wander around and munch stuff. I think it's every 3 food item a goat eats, they will produce a milk. And then I can't remember how often they produce poo. But those are both resources. So maybe if we change the criteria to not just say all green rooms should be better if you build them later, and more to say the green rooms should encourage the player to be mindful of the order that they're built in, right? So sometimes you have a room like the sapling that's better to build later, but on that run maybe you don't care, so you stick it earlier on because you're trying to get a big sequence of green rooms so that when you do eventually build the mine, it will have loads of ore in because that's what you care about on that run. I think we can be a bit more lenient about that. So the Vale has a... But even then, this should probably have a clearer name, right? Because it's called the Vale because of the physical shape, but that doesn't really relate to what you would use it for. So I would rename to something related to farming, you know? Like farm or pasture or something. Because at the moment, the name of the room isn't really telling you about the function. Okay, back to the grey rooms. We've got castles. We've got the crossing, which honestly, I think I had a moment where I realized that if I started building the blocks like this, it became much more evocative of a real space. So in the crossing, we spawn this little bridge and you go across here, and within this room there's not much you can do, but it does create this puzzle of like, how do I get down here, how do I get down here? So if you unlock this door and then you build up from there, you've now locked yourself away from this relic. So it does create a nice little a little kind of navigation puzzle. So the crossing doesn't have any traps. Does have a very slight falling hazard if you're silly. And then it has relics as a reward. And the risk, I guess, is that you don't build the level right and then you miss out on these relics. A fell. That's cool. That's a cool name. A hill for raising a farm pasture fell. I'm also fine with some of these having quite archaic names because it just adds vibes to the game. The dungeon rooms. I think we've just got way more grey rooms than we need, really. Because we've got 3 dungeons. So the dungeons are the inverse of the castles. They have all of the same stuff, but instead of moving upward, you're moving downward. And, you know, remember, because this is a kind of extraction game where you have to loop back around to the start and get out, the mastering the way that the direction of build of the different rooms is part of the game. So having certain rooms that you know will take you up or down is good. That's why so many of these rooms ended up being these tall rooms where you start at the top or go to the bottom, or start at the bottom and go to the top. Because the long flat rooms, it's just you spawn it, you run immediately over to the other side, you open the next door, and it's not very kind of interesting to engage with. The other thing that dungeons have is they all have this little locked room with a relic in. So they have a relic, and the Wraith. And the reason I'm putting the Wraith in as a risk is that when you get this door open, a little spooky Wraith will start following you around the level. And there's currently a bug on that means it never despawns. But it's kind of like the Spelunky Ghost, but when it touches you, it shuffles these void rooms into your deck that don't do anything and are just like empty spaces that you have to draft in, annoying spaces that messes your level up. So that's what's going on there. So the dungeons feel pretty decent. The fort is kind of like the crossing in the sense that it's more just like, can we make a thing that looks like a cool little place? The fort has crates, loot, relic, and there isn't much here to like create a hazard. Oh no, hang on. These can all have turrets, can't they? Does the crossing have a turret? So this is the funny. This is like a pseudo proc gen system. So there's like these pillars here. They're just decorative pillars you can smash. And then wherever I've placed them, they have a chance to turn into a turret that can shoot you. And the crossing doesn't have any of those. I'm not sure why. You've got to master the potato sometimes. That's fair. I got into who's that? Dawn? Is it Dawn? DWN in the chat talking about potatoes. There's like a pair of cordon bleu chefs that keep showing me how to make different types of potatoes on YouTube, and I've been doing them to varying degrees of success. I did some good confit potatoes or fondant potatoes at Christmas based on their method. I was very pleased with that. But I also tried doing a giant roasty and it didn't work. I think the kitchen doesn't work. So the kitchen is like, there's this blackboard that shows you all the recipes you haven't cooked yet, and then there's a cauldron, and you light the cauldron, and then you cook here. It's not a good room. It's single use. It's not very evocative. I just think there's too much here in terms of the amount of content, and there's too much that's filler. And the kitchen is kind of like, we need the kitchen because we need someone to go and cook. But what I would really like instead is if we had like 2 rooms where you could cook, but that wasn't like the designated reason for having that room, you know? So we might have a green room called the campsite that has a cauldron and you can go there and cook, but there's something else there. And then we might have a grey room that has a cauldron and it's much more like, I don't know, maybe it's the quarters instead, and the quarters is like a larger room that has a kitchen inside it. Because I think we get a bit too piddly with like the kitchen and the armory. I like this design in the sense that we get the little turrets and it starts to look like a real place. Maybe it's good to have some variation where we have a few smaller rooms. But I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm trying to fit them all into this category of being grey rooms, and grey rooms is just such a broad category of, some of them are utility, some of them are like trap runs. It's not really very clear what the category of stuff here is. But maybe I'm just being too strict on myself. So the kitchen has no risk, and I'm still using risk and reward here, even though that's more the red rooms really. But the kitchen allows you to make food. It also has crates and loot. I'll put cooking, or just cauldron. The cauldron is a bit difficult for people to work out as well, because you have to light it with a torch. It took people a long time to work out you needed to do that. Same with the bombs. Like, people don't realize there's a whole system of flammability in the game, and need some way of teaching people that. The library has loot. It has... I'm going to call them maps, but these maps can change into books as well. And what they do is, if you get a map, it shuffles a gold room into your deck. And if you pick up a green book, it shuffles a green room into your deck. And if you pick up a red book, it shuffles a red book into your deck. So these maps can they randomly swap out to be different things when the room is built, but they're just shown as maps on here. And the study just has a single map. It's like a smaller version of the library, I guess. There's currently no kind of sense of randomness. It is just a deck of cards. So whatever's in your deck, it will draw the top three, and it will say, which of these do you want? And then we're gonna, with thinking about putting in a redraw mechanic. So you get three, you don't want any of them. You spend a resource. They go to the bottom. They go into the bottom of the deck. You draw the next three, and then after you build a room, it will get shuffled. Maybe it never needs to get shuffled. I don't know. Yeah, the Kitten, you're right. The kind of maybe the grey ones are maybe the traversal part of the grey rooms is more important, because one of the pieces of rationale I was using when we made the rooms originally is that, okay, so you've got these big grey rooms where you're going from the bottom to the top or the top to the bottom, and there's a lot of stuff to pick up in these and collect, but there's a little bit of risk. And then when you've got rooms like the armory, it's like this is just good stuff, right? You can blow yourself up, but normally, like, a really good room combo is the mine, because this spawns loads of gold, and then the armory. If you have these close to each other, you can keep running back and forth between the armory with bombs and like taking them into the mine, blowing one bit up, taking another one into the mine, blowing another bit up. So the reason for the armory being so small and not having another door is it's just like getting loads of bombs is a pretty good thing in its own right. And the same logic went into the kitchen, where it was like, okay, cooking meals and taking them back to the boss in this game actually does quite a lot. So maybe the kitchen should just have a single kind of entrance and entrance, so that it blocks you off a little bit. But I do think it kind of feels a bit underwhelming. So currently, if I was to go back to this diagram of the deck, right? Just to think about think about this in terms of like how much content that's already in the game is good by this set of criteria. So we've got three red rooms that seem to be good. They have a clear risk and reward. We have four green rooms that seem to be good. They have a reason that you would draft them for your economy. They have some sort of logic that makes them better to build earlier or later on, which I quite like. The grey rooms... We've just got lots of them. And I don't... I think having a smaller set of things where some of these double up and have multiple uses might be better. The problem is the amount of work to test that is quite a lot. I also set this like arbitrary thing of wanting the rooms to have single word names, which I don't think is helping us as well. So in terms of, let's just work out which ones of these have the most unique thing. The library has a very clear sense of why you would build it, I think. The armory has a very clear sense of why you would build it, but I'm not sure if it needs to be a room on its own. Because we could have a bigger room. Like the fort and the armory are quite conceptually similar, right? So maybe they could merge into one room. So I'll put the tick on the armory at the moment in the sense that it's good to have a room that you deliberately build to get some bombs, right? That's just a very clear value proposition. It's like build this, it will help you blow stuff up. So the armory and the library have very clear functions. I think what I'm pushing up against here is that the dungeons and the castles have a very different function in the game to these utility rooms, and I'm thinking maybe what we actually need is we need to do something like that where we have a concept. We have dungeon rooms that are just like grey rooms full of traps, and then we have this other concept of just like utility rooms. You know, like just treat it as a different class of thing. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't need that much differentiation because if let's go and see how Blueprints solves this. Because I think I'm just setting too many rules on myself that aren't resulting in anything. I think this set of thinking we did up here is quite useful because this leads to interesting decisions for the player to make. Whereas some of the thinking that's going on around the grey stuff is just I don't really know if I'm just enforcing like putting rules on the thing that don't need to be there. Um, okay, let's have a look at how the room directory is described in blueprints. So blueprints, blue border rooms are the most common and indicate natural or beneficial rooms. Neutral or beneficial. They make up the first 46 rooms of the directory and can contain items, keys, or gems. Okay, so in DirtWorld, why would you draft a grey room? The main reason is to get like coins. That's the main reason. Coins and keys are like the resource that you're going to get in nearly any grey room by just like smashing jars and stuff. So we've got a similar thing there, but they've also got hazards in. But maybe that's okay because it is sort of a Spelunky-like platformer. So you expect the base level of the game to be avoiding traps and picking up coins. So maybe that's all right. Purple rooms grant extra steps. They've got the similar thing where the green rooms are like an economy room, the red rooms are detrimental. And what we've got here is the gold rooms are a reward for doing something else in the game. So our gold rooms are like the refectory has a bunch of food items in that are like quite hard to find otherwise. The reliquary is just a set of relics. You get like 3 relics for free. But you've got to go through that kind of puzzle chain of going to the library, collecting a map, 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 chance of getting the right room. And then the vault is just full of loot. So I think the room logic behind the gold rooms works quite well. So I'm going to put ticks on the 3 that we've already got. The refectory, reliquary, and the vault work very well. Yeah, I think I'm just being a bit too strict with myself about what a grey room is, maybe. Fireho, I think you're right, yeah. I think you're right. I think because what you're describing, so Fireho just said castle is like a biome, and then you've got a room called a castle. I think you're absolutely right. I think the issue is that there's this kind of categorization issue. All of the green rooms work as things you would find in a forest, right? So there is a forest, and the forest has a carnival in it. The forest has a stone circle, you know. I'm gonna start renaming these because I think going down the route of forcing them all to have single word names was stupid and has created a bunch of problems. Um, but they all fit within the broader idea of a forest. And I think when I first started this, when I was building some of the initial rooms, I did have rooms that were called things like forest, and it was like, no, this is all forest, right? So I never hit the same sort of place with the grey rooms where it's like, yeah, what you just said is exactly right. These are all castle. They are all within a castle, and even a dungeon is like part of a castle, really. I know it's like often not that way in D&D and stuff, but if you think of like, you know, where dungeons would usually occur, it's like part of a castle. So really we need to think of this as like a castle biome, and then the things you build are like rooms or like wings of the castle. So if we were going to do that, it would be like we'd have, I mean, the library still makes sense within that. You know, the kitchen maybe doesn't make sense. Maybe a kitchen is too small to be like a whole area of a castle. Maybe it would be like quarters or something. Um, yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't. There's never the thing about the structure of the game is that you always start in this like empty thing with just one room, and then you start building out from there. There's never going to be a case of like you're doing a run and now you're in this or now you're in that, because that kind of gets rid of the point of having the of having everything card driven in this way. But I do think this whole grey set has a problem that is making it hard to iterate on the content, and that's that it doesn't really know what it is. These are all places you can visit within a forest. It's kind of why the red stuff is hard to design as well, because some of them, if we go over here, some of them are like the gauntlet. That's a piece of a castle that has been overrun, right? And I called it the gauntlet because it's like a little thing you need to set of challenges you need to do in order to get a relic. So that kind of makes sense, but it's kind of like not consistent with the hatchery, which is a place where these monsters lay their eggs. You know, so it's a similar sort of problem of like it's hard to iterate on the content because we haven't decided what the suit of cards really represents. Whereas the green set, it's a lot clearer, and that's why it's been easier to develop. The blue set's relatively easy to develop as well because they're all just things like buildings that futuristic alien people might build. So we've got the auto market where you throw stuff in and it turns into coins. We've got the arboretum, which is like a second version of the sapling. We've got the museum, which is a room that you build to get relics. These all fit together because it's like they were built by the same group of people, and I can kind of imagine the lore behind them in my head a little bit. Whereas some of the others, it's a little bit less clear. So yeah, I think thinking, I haven't really got to any solutions with any of this today, but I think thinking it all out loud has been helpful because this is all stuff that's been buzzing around in my head and slowing me down a little bit. But it does make me wonder if the ideal shape of this game, both for making it easier to complete and develop and for making it easier to comprehend for players, is to cut each of these categories down. So maybe we have 6 of each color in the starting deck. We have 4 blue rooms. We have 4 gold rooms. Pretty much happy with these already. One thing you have to, I've seen a couple of suggestions in the chat that just fundamentally don't work with the way that the game works. And the main thing you need to understand about the way that the game is structured, both in terms of like just how it currently works at an engineering level and in terms of how we expect the players to gradually learn the rooms, is that once a room is built, it's not really recognized by the game as that room anymore. And there are a few reasons for that. But one is that once you've built the room, it's all of the blocks and stuff that make up that room that you're putting down, right? So it's like you're putting a stamper down that says, like, this is what goes here. So if I put a castle there, it's like, okay, now we've got all of that stuff is here. But the game knows that you built a castle, but the game doesn't read this area of the game as a castle. And I think that's important because of the amount of destruction and stuff that's possible in this game. Like the castle has spawned these safes here, and now I'm incentivized to blow them up and get the treasure out of them. If I can just do that now, I don't know if I've got what I need. I need a bomb, but I'm not going to get it. There's a lot of kind of destroying one room with the room that you build over it, which is a thing that people takes a little while for people to get their head around, but they like it once they understand it, because you can do stuff like you can spawn a room that has loads of gold ore in the floor, and then you can spawn another room across it to break the blocks to get the ore out. So you're sort of using the building sometimes to strategically destroy the stuff that you made before to open new routes and everything. So the idea of having like a way of modifying a room that you've placed or something, it doesn't work in the way that you would imagine, because as soon as you've built them, they're no longer that room. The room is like stamped there, and now it's just a series of blocks and objects. I don't know a better way of describing it. But seeing as there's only 50 people in the chat, I will let you into the secret usage of the trash bags. Is that fairies love trash, and they will always accept a trash bag on their altars. Yes, you can manipulate. So at the moment, you've got you start off with you can't manipulate the rooms you can draft at the start. There is going to be a reroll mechanic here, like the dice in Blueprint. So you have like, I'm thinking of theming it as ink. So you have like a dark purple option at the bottom here that says redraw, and if you use that, you'll spend your ink, and then you redraw the other ones. I'm not sure. It might be a better way of framing that mechanic. But you'll have that eventually, and then the other stuff in terms of deck manipulation, those green and red books up there are they will shuffle a random. Sorry, I keep hitting these invisible blocks because of a bug that we've got in this build that I will deal with later on. These green and red books up here shuffle a random room of that type. I know I need to make them more visually distinct for colorblind people, but we'll do that later. So if you're deliberately trying to do a run with loads of green stuff, you can like go to the library, see if there's a green book there, you know, deliberately load duplicates of green rooms into your deck, all of that kind of stuff. And then the way that I drafted this gold room was the same thing. I had to go and find a map, and that gives you a random golden room, which you can't normally start with. So there is deck manipulation, and then there are these blue rooms that you don't start off with in the deck. I think we've got a dev tool that lets me play around with that. I can't remember how we do it. Oh yeah. So I can deliberately... thank you, Gleb, for for letting me cheat properly at my own game. This is a dev tool that lets us change what's in the deck. I'm not sure if that's showing in the order it would be. So the blue rooms are the stuff you get later on in the game that just give you way better stuff, or have some function that is now easier to perform because earlier in the game you have to do loads of running around or whatever. That's the other thing about the green rooms, that you have all these flowers that don't have much functionality yet, but I will make them have some later. But they grow in green rooms, and the sort of longer you leave them, the more of them grow. Which creates a nice aesthetic effect of like you go back through the level and it looks different. But I will have to make recipes that use some of these flowers. They do a few things, but they don't do as many things as I'd like them to do. And like I was saying earlier, I don't like having things that are just visual variations on the same thing. I like to have each thing have its own kind of set of rules or interactions, because otherwise it really kind of bites with the roguelikey bit of the game. And like when I talk about roguelikes and what appeals to me about roguelikes, to me it is the kind of knowledge game aspect of gradually learning how a world works, not necessarily just the fact that it's run based, you know. I think that the problem this game has at the moment, which isn't, it's not that big a deal because it's something that will just naturally come out in the wash, is that some of the secrets are so big and weird and there aren't enough kind of interstitial stages of like teaching you to be aware that there are secrets to look out for. So for example, the thing that you need to do to unlock the blue rooms is currently such a weird big thing that you just wouldn't naturally stumble across it. And that's okay, but you know, you need to build to a particular place and get a thing and bring it back and everything. And it's almost like I need to introduce a mini version of that puzzle so that people have done it once and then they go, oh, okay, the game wants me to do that sort of thing. Okay, now I need to see if there's a bigger version of that I can do, you know? But also, this is very much just in line with how I would imagine this to go, which is like you develop the extreme version of something first, and then maybe you make the more toned down version of it later on when you realize that people need a bit of a kind of stepping stone to that larger thing. Do the goats eat flowers? I can't remember. Will you eat a flower? Yes. Perfect. I need to make... I'm going to change that meat sprite at some point to like a big leg, because it will look more appetizing than my well done steak. The goats do not eat trash bags, though. Maybe I should make them eat trash bags, though. That's... any more extra value we can add to trash bags is good. I mean, there isn't any water yet. I have thought about adding water, but it's... we have a stage in the... We're going to be looking at the player controller again at some point and the player movement. And when we do that, I will sort of assess the feasibility of adding liquid blocks so that we can do stuff like having a room full of fluid and you break the floor and the fluid falls into another room. But to do that, we really need a very simple swimming mechanic, which is like Mario style swimming, where you just jump in the water and you gradually go up. I would like that, but so I think there's a. I'm gonna finish the stream in the next 10 minutes or so, but I think there's a knot of problems here, and I think if I think them through, just think through the knot of problems, is that there are some rooms which don't have a clear use case. There are the other problem is I wanted rooms to have single word names. And the reason I'm writing this down, it sounds ridiculous, right? But I've been following this rule for a long time. And I think it's not serving the project. I think it's actually causing a disproportionate amount of problems for a rule that doesn't achieve anything. Because, you know, when I said, oh, the kitchen is an underwhelming room because it's just a cauldron in a little room. But what would I call it? Well, if I were to say, oh, we have these are all castle rooms, so we have the servants' wing, we have the barracks, we have the east dungeon and the west dungeon. You know, removing that restriction on single word names actually opens up quite a lot of design space for how these things can be themed. So I think this was really not a very good kind of choice, and it's been limiting a lot of the thinking around a lot of this stuff in a way that is just not it's just creating limitations that don't produce anything good. And I think removing this is gonna, it does make me think, well, maybe some of these should have longer names, like the luscious veil or the tiny sapling. The gold mine, you know. It's a really silly little thing, but sometimes I think if you pull those things out and make them obvious, you can go, oh, actually, I've been doing all of these other bad choices because of this self-imposed thing that wasn't actually achieving anything, apart from making things look tidy, I guess. And we don't want to have, we probably don't want to have this kind of thing where we've got loads of grey rooms and then slightly fewer green and red rooms, because it just makes the, you know, what I was saying at the beginning of, if we have 6 of each one or 8 of each one, it means that you start off with this very clear mental model of your chance of pulling a particular thing. I think the other thing in terms of like content planning here is that if we look back at the ones that have got a tick here, they all have a unique world object that maybe not totally unique to them, but that is associated more strongly with them. So the landfill has trash bags, and trash bags can spawn in other situations, but the landfill is a room you would build to deliberately spawn trash bags. The same with the mine and the gold, the same with the sapling and the fruit, the special types of fruit. That's the only way you can get a banana currently, is by building a sapling. The veil has the goats. So I think part of the issue here really is that we've got lots of rooms that just don't have a unique set piece within them. And making sure that every room has a unique set piece is going to be the thing that makes all of the problems here go away. So maybe the thing with the red rooms is we have 6 red rooms, and there's like a special hazard in each one. That might sound very time consuming, but if I commit to it, it actually might be quite liberating to just go, okay, even if I wouldn't do this, but even if we had to go, oh, there's only 4 of each room, but they're all very unique. Because I think the problem I was facing is the rooms that feel good currently are those rooms that have a unique object that was made almost specifically for that room. And sort of having that knowledge at the back of my head, and then having the game built in such a way that, I was building towards having 10 or 12 of each type of room, which is kind of the way the game was naturally progressing without any intervention. That's quite daunting, because that makes me feel like, well, the only way I can make all of these things good is to kind of create this massive content treadmill of stuff that I can't do. And bearing in mind what I'm thinking forward to now is the runway from going from a open alpha on itch to this being a commercially viable Steam game. So when I'm talking about, oh, I'll only do 6 rooms or I'll only do 8 rooms, that doesn't mean that that's all that will ever be in the game. But basically, that's the minimum viable product that I would want to do before we put this on Steam, and maybe do an open access, do a early access with it. And I think that's the aha moment for today, which is good. We got there in the last 10 minutes. Is basically, I don't need to go totally back to the drawing board. A lot of these room designs will kind of, you'll play the game and you won't notice much difference because you'll see the same room and everything. But I think, assuming there is a smaller set of room cards, giving them maybe a bit more fanciful, flavorful names, and then making sure each one has a very unique object in it. Not just like a challenge where it's like, oh, in the castle you go from the bottom to the top, but it's much more like... So the library works very well, right? Because the library has... You know what a library is. And there is a mechanic for picking up a book or picking up a map, and those things naturally fit into the library. But then I tried to make like the study as a baby version of the library, and it's like, I don't know if that adds anything. So I think going back from that, taking away these smaller rooms like the study, or taking away the duplicate rooms like the castle and the dungeon, and instead thinking, okay, the grey set of cards are parts of a castle. They should all have a slightly more grandiose name, like the servants' quarters or the barracks or something. And then making sure every single one of them has an object that is developed specifically for it. And it might not be that that object only occurs there, but I think making it so that I am developing new game objects specifically for a room, and then maybe spreading them out into other places later on, is a good way to make sure that we've got enough content and that the content feels meaningful. So the bombs are a really good example of that, because you can find bombs in a crate, but you can also build the armory specifically to get bombs. So that makes the armory feel like it has a very specific reason for existing in the game. Yeah, I think that's the little kind of web of relationships I've been trying to unpick today. It's been quite helpful, actually. I know for a lot of listeners, it will just sound like I was going in circles, but I really feel like I have a way forward now, which means that I can actually go onto the Trello and put some action points down about this. So the new to-dos are to sketch new room ideas for 666 green, grey, red, ensuring each one has a unique set piece, item, creature, trap. Right, so that's our new kind of criteria for what makes a good room in the game. And this might change, it might evolve over time, but I think based on what we just went through, I think that's it. I think the way that we get to a stage where I'm happy with the whole deck is to make sure that each one has a unique thing in it. Um, and I know for some of you that are more like time conscious, you would think, well, this is bad. You've just scope creeped your game beyond belief. But there's a very big difference between sort of like having four very good things and acknowledging why they're good and then saying, oh, I've got to make 30 of these versus having four, I've got to make 30 of these and I'll just let some of them be rubbish, or saying, I've got four of these, I know what makes them good, and now I'm going to do two more, I'm going to do four more. Yeah. So having that, like, I think working towards six of each, but with that strict criteria of like they've all got to be unique in this specific way. Because I was trying to do that, but the way that I was trying to make each room unique was varied, and some of them, like Kitten pointed out in the chat earlier, some of the uniqueness comes from the way that you use the blocks to traverse in a particular way. But I think maybe, you know, a room with a hole that you can fall down and die, that's not enough uniqueness to justify that room's existence. So yeah, what I will probably be doing next is working out some of those on paper. So this action point that I've just given myself, or the reason I've framed it as a sketch, is because, you know, sitting here and making all of these in Engine is going to be time consuming, and it is probably better to sort of brainstorm them on paper in some way. So I will either do that by hand, or I'll do it in one of these tools, but I'm not going to do it today because I'm already kind of mentally exhausted from thinking that through. But I do think that gives us a better set of criteria to work with. Yeah, it's not scope creep, is it? It's just defining the scope more clearly. And I think that's one of the problems with the discussion around scope creep that you get, particularly on YouTube, is the ideal scope for a game is what the game needs, sort of multiplied by what you're able to do, right? Whereas I think a lot of people, when they hear about scope, they're just thinking of like only about what they want to do or how much time they've got. And it's like, that's not how you make the game good. The scope needs to be appropriate to the game, right? So a lot of the issues with this game are really kind of inherent to the genre that I'm working with, and that means that I just need to set the scope to what the game needs to work. Now, people, like I said, people are having fun with the alpha; they're having a good time. But if I really want to bring out the parts of the game that really shine, then I think going down this route of making sure that there's a very clear thing you're getting out of building each room would be good. And that, you know, there's nothing to say that once I've got a solid block of rooms that all do what we've been talking about, that I can't add a couple more on to each category. But I do think trying to get it so it's a level amount of each to start off with is going to make the game easier to understand as well. Because we need to get players to sort of understand the fact that there's a deck there in the first place, because that keeps coming up. That's true, Maui, yeah. The grid in Blueprints does a lot of work. I mean, the equivalent here is, I don't think you can really see it in the game, in the current build of the game. There was a way to kind of hack this in previous builds of the game, but one of the things that we're doing here is building out to things. It's just not very, there's two mechanics that require you to build out to specific things. So instead of having a very gridded experience, it's a bit more like freeform of like, oh, I need to generally go to the right. And then you'll get to the right and it'll be like, oh, I need to go down from here. And I don't think there's a way to show it at the moment because we don't have the map. But basically, there's some stuff that spawns in the world that you can build to. and then there are a couple of helper objects that you can pick up that will point you in the direction of that. But like I mentioned earlier on, some of these things are just way too hidden, and I need a baby version of that mechanic to introduce it to people. So, you know, it might be that if I just build like 3 rooms in one direction, I might start to see something pop up that you can build to, and then suddenly it's like, okay, being able to build in that direction without going up and down is suddenly meaningful because I realize that that thing is there and I want to try and get there, you know? So that there are some sort of... It's not exactly the same design space as Blueprints because of that. And I did initially... Like very early prototypes of this, I had like a void around the level that when you built up to it, you just destroyed your rooms and you couldn't build any further. And that wasn't as evocative as just like straight up having this endless space. Oh look, you can see, can you see up at the top left? There's something there. So can we build up there? So now suddenly I've got a building goal. I've still got this annoying bug where I can't see the red stuff. But we'll see if we can get up there. Yeah, now like my room choice is screwing me up. But if I can get to that door... If I can go back to that door, then I might be okay. Yeah, the game just needs more of those types of things, which is like stuff to get to with your building. Because the void is cool and evocative, but it's not... giving you those little interstitial goals of like trying to get up to this thing. Hello? Can I see it? Look! There it is. I don't know if anyone's played the demo and not seen those yet, but they're... I can't build over it. You need to be able to build over it to sort of claim it. This was... I can't remember who suggested it, if it was Cabbage. It was talking about like... triple letter scores or triple word scores that you get in Scrabble where you lay your tiles over a particular thing and claim it. That's kind of what we were trying to do with these, but I've just screwed it and I can't build over it. And we can't view it on the map right now because we don't have a map properly. It only shows up when you go into build mode. This is so frustrating. Normally if I get to them I can build into them, but I can't do it today. Maybe one of the power-ups we need is like a firework or some sort of explosive that you can launch from here and you can just launch directly up at them and it will blow it up. And then you don't always need to build a room over it. I don't think they blow up from bombs yet either. I think they only blow up when you build a room across them. So you need sort of more options for... Just punch them. Pinata asteroids. Excuse me. How did you end up in the ground? So much stuff broken because of the current menu work. So loads of things that are the wrong size, which we will fix later on, but... I was gonna... My streaming schedule for this year, or for the start of this year, I was gonna start on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but I haven't scheduled a Wednesday this week. Mainly because it's just taking me a while to get back into the swing of things with everything going on. But I'm going to be back on Thursday. We're doing 4 top-down action games on Thursday. Looking at them, giving them some feedback and stuff like that. And then next week we'll have the community week fortnightly thing. Boo! I'll throw poo at the asteroid. I've also got a bunch of sketches of other game ideas that have Procreate time lapses. So I might put out a video on the Krankenhaus channel that is just talking through those. Because I think sometimes, especially if you have like constantly restarting things syndrome, it can be helpful to just like get all your ideas out and like write them down or draw them or talk about them, and then they kind of get out of the way and stop distracting you from your current project. I don't know if anyone else has that similar problem of just like there's always new ideas for things that are like a totally different project, and I think sometimes by sort of letting yourself have a bit of time with those ideas rather than like denying them too much, then you get them out of your head and then you can focus on the other thing. Banana. Where should we take the banana? Another thing I'm going to do in this much later on is probably replace the room backgrounds with well, at the moment they're just one big card, and I'm going to change that further down the line. It's very cosmetic though, so it doesn't really matter at this stage, but I will kind of make different sections of like, here's a bit of broken, here's some plants, here's a big bit of broken wall, and then I'll kind of dot them around rather than just having one big block behind each room. I don't have my map. It's pretty unplayable without the map. Why are you down there now? How did you get down there? Yeah, Krankenhaus is just what I named my account for posting my games. I'm not gonna make an indie game studio and then call it Indie Game Clinic, am I? That's like there's nothing indie about having indie in the name of a thing. It needs to be a different brand from the channel. You can't make a sort of developer profile on Steam and be called honestly legitimate indie games made independently honestly, because it's just not very cool. Oh, he loves a banana. He hasn't had a banana in centuries. Don't worry, that text is not going to be that small either. Who up cranking their house? Right, folks, I am gonna wrap it up for today because my brain is fried. I feel pretty good after that session though. It really only came together at the end, but now I know, you know, it's like you do some design thinking and it's like, yeah, but what's the action point from this? What do I need to do based on this bit of planning? And I think in this case it is come up with a new set of rooms based on the new criteria. Don't build them in engine yet. Plan them on paper or some other quicker way. And yeah, use that criteria. Like throw away the single word room thing because it's a pain in the butt and isn't producing anything good. Make sure you're thinking of, instead of trying to make the rooms out of everything that's already in the game, make sure that each room concept has a specific object associated with it, so that it feels unique. And then, you know, make 6 of each under those criteria, and then if there's space for like 2 more little things after that, then do that. That feels like reasonably actionable, which is good. These torches stop working after a while. That's a bug. I think I've got that in Trello. They just stop being flammable after a while. That one hasn't. Can you name yourself anything as a dev on stream, or does it have to be your company name? I mean, you can just put your name down as your company name, yeah. I actually saw... I'll talk about this very quickly before I sign off, but I saw a post on Reddit the other day that was asking about this, and it was saying, like, why do people pretend to be a studio when they're one person? And I think there's a couple of ways of looking at that. And one is that it's pretense and it's pretending, and it's like professional role play. Which I think often is bad, right? Like, doing stuff because you think it makes you seem more professional or legitimate just for that reason is generally bad. But I do think branding yourself and thinking of what your brand is, and this is not stuff for like people who just started making games last year. This is stuff for people who've been making stuff for a little while, or maybe you make games and you make other types of media and you've got a real kind of good sense of what your creative voice is or whatever. But I do think coming up with a branding for your studio, even if it is just you or just you and contractors or whatever, can be a good way of working out what the tone of your work is, of like working out what the window of that you operate in is. So for me, it was like, okay, I still want to keep the medical doctor thing coming over from Indie Game Clinic. I still want that, but the games that I tend to work on tend to be a bit weird and zany. So I ended up going with Krankenhaus because it was like the German word for hospital, and because crank has an association in English with being like a mental health thing, let's say. And I know that all the games that I want to work on, yeah, I've got like a big list of games I would love to make in my life, right? But the set of games that I can make and the set of games that it's best for me to work on currently are all in this sort of space of being like weird, zany, smaller games, right? And I think coming up with a brand helps you to lock that in and say, this is the type of thing that I'm working on. You know, it's the same as making a YouTube channel or something. You might have various interests, and if you try and just all brand them as yourself, then you're gonna the audience that you'll get won't be relevant to all the things you do, right? So it's the same sort of thinking. That's what brands do, you know, like that's what branding is. It's kind of creating a thing, yeah, like you say, it's creating yourself legally a legal separate entity. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, my dream games are games that I couldn't possibly make. That's why they're dream games. The games that I will make are not my dream games, because the games that I will make fall within the range of what I can actually do. And even with this, which is a relatively small game, I'm still having to hire help and get help from elsewhere. Which reminds me, I need to email someone about a logo after this, because I've got a local logo artist that is going to do us a new logo. Right. Thank you all for joining. I hope you have a good rest of the week if I don't see you before then. I've been told I end my streams too abruptly, which I don't know how to make sure that doesn't happen, so I'm just going to stare at the camera for like 10 seconds and then end the stream.